Okay, imagine this scenario. You see a friend, maybe online, maybe in person, and they're just celebrating this huge win. Like they got the dream job or bought a house or maybe just, hit a personal goal. What's that very first flicker of feeling inside?
Yeah, that split-second reaction.
Is it just pure, unadulterated joy for them? Or does that little voice, that modern world comparison thing whisper, why not me?
Or just that tiny twinge.
Exactly. That feeling that maybe their gain somehow takes away from your own potential happiness. Well, what if I told you there's this ancient practice designed specifically to flip that whole script, something that could actually multiply your own joy?
It's a pretty radical idea in our competitive world.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging into Mudita. It's a really profound concept from Buddhist traditions. People often translate it as sympathetic joy or maybe appreciative joy.
Yeah, those are the common translations.
Yeah. We've gone through a whole stack of your sources for this one, everything from, ancient spiritual texts to really recent psychological and even neurological studies.
A real mix.
Our mission today is to unpack what Mudita really means, how you actually practice it, and some of the pretty surprising benefits. Think of this as your shortcut to genuinely, truly delighting in other people's happiness. It could honestly transform your whole emotional world. Get ready for a kind of joy that actually grows when others do well.
What's really compelling, I think, is just how universal that tendency towards comparison is. We all feel it, right?
Oh, yeah.
But these ancient teachings, they offer a systematic way, almost like a step-by-step guide to move past it, to open up to what feels like an almost limitless source of happiness. It's a real fundamental shift in how we see the world and, everyone in it.
Okay, let's unpack that. What is Mudita exactly? The sources seem pretty clear. It's not just general happiness. It's got a specific flavor.
That's right. It's definitely specific. Mudita is described as a cultivated kind of pleasure. It's this deep delight that arises when you genuinely appreciate someone else's well-being, their happiness, their good fortune.
Cultivated, meaning you work at it?
Yes, exactly. It's described as unselfish, appreciative, totally other-centered. And the key thing, I think, is its unconditional quality. You feel this joy for them even if you had nothing to do with their success, and crucially, without expecting anything back. No personal gain involved. It's seen as a pure, selfless feeling that actually purifies the heart.
That unconditional part. Wow. That hits hard. Our sources use a really helpful image to get this across, don't they?
They do. Probably the closest thing most of us can relate to is that feeling a loving parent has watching their child achieve something wonderful.
Yeah, totally.
That deep, selfless happiness where the parent's own joy just gets bigger because the child succeeded. It doesn't diminish it at all. That's a good window into what Mudita feels like.
And looking at its opposite really clarifies things too. We're talking about things like, envy, jealousy.
Absolutely. That sort of painful resentment when someone else gets something good, that's the direct opposite.
Or even Schadenfreude, taking pleasure in someone else's misfortune.
Right, which is maybe even more toxic. It's characterized by malice, really.
Yeah.
All these negative states are rooted in self-focus, this feeling of lack. Mudita is presented as the direct antidote, the medicine for those kinds of suffering-inducing mind states.
It's described as an inner wellspring of boundless joy. That phrase really stuck with me, like it's always there waiting to be tapped.
That's the idea. In these traditions, Mudita isn't just a fleeting mood. It's seen as an inherent capacity of the mind itself, something you can actually access and develop, like a skill.
Like building a muscle.
Kind of, yeah. And it's one of the boundless states or immeasurables. Which means when it's fully developed, you can extend this joy limitlessly, no prejudice, to all beings. The texts describe it as pervading the entire world with unselfish joy that is abundant, grown great, measureless, without hostility or ill will.
Okay, this next point, when I was going through the sources, it just leaped out. The fact that we don't really have one single perfect word for mudita in English.
Yeah.
We have to use phrases like sympathetic joy or appreciative joy. That alone tells you something pretty significant about how our culture often frames happiness, doesn't it?
It really does. It raises this fascinating question, if your language doesn't easily encapsulate a concept, does that make it harder to cultivate? This linguistic gap, it points towards a fundamental difference in, let's say, cultural models of happiness. The Buddhist model sees joy as this infinitely available, shareable resource. You lighting your candle doesn't diminish my flame, right? Whereas often in the West, our frameworks can be more individualistic, sometimes competitive, viewing happiness almost like a zero-sum game. If you win, I lose. Mudita just completely rejects that premise.
That's such a different way to look at the world. And Mudita isn't just off on its own, is it? It's part of a bigger system, what our sources call the divine abodes.
That's right, the Brahmavihāras. Mudita is a key piece of these 4 divine abodes, which are considered sort of the ideal ways to relate to other beings. They're also called the 4 immeasurables because, again, their potential scope is limitless.
So remind us, what are the 4?
Okay, you have metta, which is loving kindness, goodwill, then karu, that's compassion, then our focus today, mudita, sympathetic joy, and finally, upekkha, which is equanimity.
Equanimity, like balance.
Exactly, balance, composure. These 4 are seen as these universal inner attitudes reflecting the mind's potential for goodness. They're described as supreme ways of conducting yourself towards everyone.
So it sounds like they're not just separate items on a checklist, but they work together like an ecosystem. How do they interact? Like, what's the link between compassion and sympathetic joy?
You nailed it. It's an integrated, dynamic system. Think of it like emotional intelligence. A metta, that loving kindness, is the foundation. It's the basic wish for everyone to be well and happy.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, if that fundamental goodwill encounters suffering in another being, what naturally arises?
Compassion, karuta. You want the suffering to stop.
Precisely. And if that same goodwill, that metta, encounters happiness or success or good fortune in another,
then mudita comes up. You want that good stuff to continue for them.
Yes. You wish for it to continue and even grow. And then upekkha, equanimity, is the crucial stabilizer. It's what stops compassion from turning into overwhelming despair or grief.
Ah, right.
And it keeps mudita from becoming like manic excitement or attachment. It keeps the response grounded, wise. So the whole framework acts like a complete emotional operating system for navigating life. It replaces those unskillful reactions, envy, aversion, indifference, with skillful, beneficial ones.
Okay, I can definitely see now why mudita is often called out as the hardest of the 4 to really cultivate.
It often is.
It feels like it runs smack into our modern instincts sometimes. How do you genuinely cheer for someone else's win, especially if you're maybe feeling down or struggling yourself? Does it feel fake at first?
That's a very common and real challenge. And yes, it often means consciously overriding some deeply programmed responses. Its difficulty comes because it directly confronts the ego's most deep-seated habits, comparison, judgment, envy, and that pervasive feeling of scarcity.
Scarcity, yeah. The pie isn't big enough.
Exactly. The belief that someone else's gain is your loss. Moody asks you to celebrate another's good fortune with a full heart, even when you might be going through hardship or feeling a profound sense of lack yourself. It's this radical act of selfless generosity of spirit. That's what makes cultivating such a profound and challenging inner discipline.
It's also really interesting how this core idea, mudita, shows up differently across traditions. Our sources mention how its interpretation kind of evolved within Buddhism itself.
Indeed. The fundamental definition that unselfish delight stays pretty constant, but the emphasis on how it's applied, well, that's shifted depending on the goals of different schools or traditions. It's less about specific texts and more about seeing that functional shift.
So in the earlier Buddhist teachings, what was its main job, so to speak?
In those earlier traditions, like Theravāda, based on the Pali Canon, Mudita's main function was seen as psychological purification.
Cleaning up the mind.
Pretty much. It was this altruistic joy that acted as a direct antidote to the kilasas, the mental defilements, particularly envy, isa, and resentment. By actively cultivating joy for others, the idea was you'd weaken and eventually root out these negative states, which leads to a purer, more peaceful mind. Kind of mental hygiene, really.
Okay, and then later on, it became something bigger, almost like fuel for the spiritual journey.
Exactly. In the later Mahāyāna traditions, its role really expanded. It wasn't just about personal purification anymore. It became a crucial part of the Bodhisattva path. That's the path of someone aiming for enlightenment, not just for themselves, but for all beings.
Wow, that's a big shift.
Huge. The emphasis moves towards rejoicing specifically in others' merits, their good deeds, their virtue, their spiritual progress. There's this idea that by actively celebrating the good in everyone, the Bodhisattva generates immense positive energy or merit, almost like spiritual fuel, that propels their own journey forward, ultimately to benefit everyone.
So it goes from like cleaning out the negative in your own mind to actively building up positive energy for the whole world.
That's a great way to put it. What's fascinating is how this shift in Mudita's function mirrors that broader evolution in Buddhist thought, from the ideal of the Arhat seeking self-liberation to the ideal of the Bodhisattva seeking universal liberation. Mudita becomes less of a subtractive practice removing stains and more of a profoundly additive one generating the positive force needed to help everyone. It really speaks to the scope of one's intention, you know? How much impact do you want to have?
Okay, so theory is great, but how do we actually do this? How do we practice mudita? The sources talk about formal meditation, but also just bringing it into everyday life.
Yes, it's definitely a practice, bhavana, meaning mental development. The formal meditation usually follows a pretty structured progression. Some teachers call it effective weight training.
Effective weight training, I love that. Okay, lay it on us. What's the workout?
Well, first you find a quiet spot, get comfortable, maybe do some mindful breathing just to settle the mind. Then you start the sequence, gradually. You might begin with yourself, actually recalling a moment of genuine happiness. Or maybe easier, start with a friend who just seems naturally happy, someone whose joy is easy to connect with.
Start with the lighter weights, got it.
Precisely. Then you move on to someone you dearly love, a close friend, family member. Feel joy for their well-being. After that, a crucial step. A neutral person.
Someone you don't really know well, like the cashier or someone you see on the bus?
Exactly. An acquaintance, maybe a stranger you see who looks happy, someone you don't have strong feelings about. Either way, this is where you really start to broaden the capacity generating joy without that pre-existing emotional connection.
Okay. And then comes the heavy lifting.
You guessed it. The most challenging stage is often bringing to mind a difficult person, someone you have conflict with or just plain dislike.
Oof. That sounds tough.
It is. This stage directly confronts resentment, aversion, ill will. It's about finding even a tiny spark of wishing them well, wishing them freedom from the anger or delusion that makes them difficult. And then finally, you expand. You radiate that feeling of sympathetic joy outwards impartially to all beings, everywhere, above, below, all around.
And you use phrases while you do this.
Yes. Silently repeating phrases can be really helpful. Things like, may your happiness and good fortune continue. Or, I celebrate your success and well-being. Simple, heartfelt wishes.
So yeah, it's definitely not just sitting on a cushion. It feels like a whole life practice. Like learning a new language, you practice the phrases, then eventually you start actually thinking in it. How does that translate off the cushion into daily life?
Great analogy. A key part is just a mindful recognition, actively looking for opportunities to feel mudita during your day. You hear about a colleague's promotion, pause, and genuinely feel happy for them. A friend shares good news. Practice what psychologists call an active constructive response.
Active constructive, what's that?
It means responding with genuine enthusiasm, asking questions, wanting to hear more, really sharing in their excitement, not just a quick, oh, nice. Research shows this way of responding significantly strengthens relationships and boosts positive feelings for everyone involved.
That makes total sense. What else?
Daily reflections can be powerful too. Just taking a few moments, maybe at the end of the day, to intentionally bore to mind the joys and successes of others you heard about or witnessed. Pairing this with gratitude for your own blessings is also helpful. It counteracts that feeling of lack or scarcity that often fuels envy.
Right. Tackle the envy head on.
Exactly. And when envy does pop up, because it probably will, the practice is first to just mindfully notice it. Envy is here. No judgment. Then consciously try to reframe the thought. Instead of getting stuck in why them and not me, gently guide the mind towards appreciation. Maybe use one of those phrases silently. I am happy that you are happy.
It sounds so beneficial, but you mentioned challenges. What are the main obstacles? Buddhist psychology talks about enemies that can derail these positive states, right?
Yes, they identify far enemies, things that are in direct opposition, and near enemies, which are trickier because they look similar but are actually counterfeits.
Okay, so what are the far enemies of mudita, the obvious opposites?
The main ones are jealousy, Isakyu and Pali, and envy. That sort of painful resentment when you want what someone else has or you just can't stand their success. Greed and aversion are related too. They all stem from that mistaken belief in separation, in scarcity, and maybe an overinflated sense of self-importance.
And the near enemy, that sounds more subtle, maybe harder to spot.
It really is. This is considered a subtle and quite perilous obstacle because it looks like mudita on the surface, but it actually undermines its genuine development. It's described as being absent of wisdom, tainted by attachment.
So what does it look like in practice? How would I know if I'm feeling the near enemy instead of real mudita?
The most common form is described as a kind of exhilaration or giddiness, a worldly, self-absorbed joy. The key difference is this. True mudita is genuinely other-centered. The near enemy, however, is fundamentally self-referential.
Meaning it's still about me.
Exactly. It often arises from a feeling of personal lack or insufficiency. You might be sort of grasping at the other person's pleasant experience to make yourself feel good, almost like living vicariously through them. The focus subtly remains on me and my feelings getting a boost, rather than a pure, selfless appreciation of their happiness.
Could it be like, I'm happy for you because your success makes me look good, like being part of a winning team?
That could be one form, yeah. Conditional joy, or even just outwardly pretending to be happy for someone while secretly feeling envious. Buddhist, a famous commentator, described this near enemy as joy connected to worldly objects or status, rooted in attachment, not pure spiritual joy. It's where the ego gets really clever, kind of hijacking the practice for its own purposes. Spotting this requires some pretty sharp introspection.
Right, so it's about the motivation behind the feeling.
Yeah.
And being discerning. It's not just about feeling happy whenever anyone is happy, regardless of how they got there.
Absolutely not. That's a crucial point. Mudita isn't a blanket endorsement of all happiness. It has to be guided by wisdom and ethics. You wouldn't cultivate sympathetic joy for someone who's happy because they successfully cheated someone or harmed others, right?
No, definitely not.
The appropriate response there, according to these teachings, would likely be karuna, compassion. Compassion for the delusion and the negative consequences they're creating for themselves and others. The proper focus for mudita is celebrating wholesome qualities, skillful actions, virtuous conduct, and the genuine peace and happiness that arise from those things.
That clarification is really important. Okay, shifting gears a bit, it's amazing how modern science is starting to catch up and validate some of these ancient ideas. What does psychology say about the benefits of sympathetic joy?
Oh, the findings are pretty extensive. Psychologically, cultivating mudita seems to really enhance overall emotional well-being. It acts as that direct antidote to toxic, self-focused states like envy and judgment. It replaces that kind of cramped, claustrophobic feeling with something that feels bright and open.
Less stress, maybe.
Definitely linked to reduced stress. And perhaps most strikingly, it radically expands your potential sources of happiness. Suddenly, you're not just limited to your own successes. You can genuinely tap into the joys and triumphs of billions of other people. Unsurprisingly, this is empirically linked to greater overall life satisfaction.
And it helps relationships too. You mentioned the active constructive response.
Yes, profoundly. Responding to good news with genuine enthusiasm, the capitalization, as psychologists call it, demonstrably strengthens bonds, increases feelings of closeness, intimacy, trust. It fosters understanding and patience. And beyond close relationships, cultivating mudita is also linked to generally being more pro-social, more willing to help others, more altruistic. It fundamentally starts to dismantle that scarcity mindset we keep talking about.
It really shifts your whole worldview from competition to abundance, interconnection.
Exactly. It's a real break from the ego's default settings.
That's a powerful list of benefits. What about the brain itself? Is neuroscience looking into this positive empathy?
It is, yeah. For a long time, empathy research focused mostly on feeling with someone's pain, which relates more to courage, compassion. But now, positive empathy or empathic joy is a growing field, and the findings are fascinating.
Like what?
Neuroimaging studies, using fMRI for instance, show that when you genuinely feel happy for someone else's success, it activates the same core reward centers in your brain that light up when you experience personal pleasure.
Seriously, the same bits?
Yeah, areas like the nucleus accumbens, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, parts of the brain associated with reward, pleasure, things we find valuable. So feeling happy for others is intrinsically rewarding at a basic neurological level. Your brain essentially registers their good news as good news for you too.
Wow, so your brain isn't just passively registering this, it's actively involved.
That's another crit finding. While there's overlap with personal pleasure pathways, sympathetic joy seems to engage brain networks involved in perspective taking and, significantly, higher level cognitive control, particularly in the prefrontal cortex.
Meaning it's not just automatic emotion?
Exactly. The significant involvement of the prefrontal cortex suggests mudita isn't just a passive feeling that happens to you. It's an active cognitive and emotional skill that can be trained. Your brain is literally learning to reappraise a situation like a rival's success, not as a threat, but as a source of reward. This is bhavana mental development in action. You're actively rewiring your brain for greater happiness and connection. And we even see hints of this on a larger scale. Social network studies have shown that happiness itself can be contagious, rippling through communities.
This whole deep dive into mudita, it's been incredibly eye-opening. We've seen it as this specific, unselfish delight in the well-being of others, a key part of that larger system of the divine abodes. designed to really shift our whole emotional landscape. We saw how it evolved, from a tool for personal purification to this powerful engine for universal liberation in different traditions. And that it's something you actively cultivate systematically with specific practices.
And specific challenges like those near enemies to watch out for.
Right, those subtle counterfeits. And now we see modern science validating so much of this, the psychological benefits and neurological basis. It seems undeniable that Mudita offers this radical, powerful antidote to that comparing mind, that scarcity mindset that can really plague modern life.
It truly does. It transforms the whole social world from this potential battlefield of competition into a boundless field of potential happiness. It just exponentially multiplies your opportunities for joy.
And ultimately, practicing mudita isn't just about feeling better yourself, is it? It feels bigger than that.
I think so. It contributes to this positive feedback loop. Your genuine joy for others can uplift them, maybe inspire them, and that positivity can ripple outwards through our networks, our communities. It helps foster a culture based more on mutual support and celebration rather than constant envy and competition. It's a really profound way to live out our interconnectedness.
Absolutely. I want to leave you, our listeners, with a thought that came up in the sources, often attributed to the Buddha, though the exact origin is debated. Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared.
Beautiful quote.
It really is. So maybe the next time you hear some good news about someone else, could be big, could be small, just pause for a second. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what kind of joy might you unlock right there? Not just for them, but truly for yourself, and maybe even ripple it out into the world.